This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed podcast. Thank you, Jessi, so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So today we're going to start with a game. This game is inspired by our chat before this. So to fill you guys in, Jessi was telling me that right now her company's kind of in this growth mindset, right? And that sometimes it's difficult to navigate that situation when maybe like there's not enough people to dedicate to certain things when you're growing and all that stuff. So this game is inspired by that. So it is called Prioritize or Pulverize. So I'm going to give you a bunch of possible scenarios that you may even be met with during this growth period that you are either going to prioritize or pulverize. Okay, that's okay.
Let's shoot.
Alrighty. Okay. First one. A junior designer just brain slacked. This brand guide is garbage. It's 3 minutes before your client presentation. Would you...
Well, I'm just trying to think about, have I ever done that? Because it sounds like a very on-brand thing for Jessi to laugh.
3 minutes for the client presentation. It's horrible. Not you, horrible. This is just saying that you're saying that.
Whenever it comes to things like that, there's the alignment of expectation and reality.
Yeah.
And so managing expectations and walking people through the process is a huge part of what we do. I got into this business thinking that my job was going to be making beautiful things and being called a creative genius every day. I was mistaken. That is a much smaller percentage of my job than is the reality of the situation. It's a lot of interacting with clients. It's a lot of explaining outwardly that the creative process is iterative. It's collaborative. It's really not a reasonable expectation to just be like, okay, go away and come back. And it's all done in one shot and it's not really informed by a lot of collaboration. So that is how 3 minutes from now, talking to the client, we kind of manage those expectations and make sure that the relationship is preserved so that way we can circle back and make good. Now, theoretically, this should never happen because I like to do check-ins far sooner than that. But there is, on our part as creatives, a certain amount of project management, certain amount of professional courtesy that we extend to our colleagues to make sure that we're not walking into something totally cold. We're all aligned. We're speaking with a united voice. And so that can be addressed a little bit privately. Again, after the client meeting within 3 minutes.
For sure. No, I think that so prioritize or pulverize.
Prioritize the client relationship.
Oh, no, I think so.
Pulverize a junior designer, maybe.
No, I definitely understand. I think that in that situation specifically, they're talking to the client about what something is in reality is important, regardless of maybe if you have to tell them like some harsh truths. So that is something that you should definitely prioritize. But maybe the wording could be a little better. Be realistic. Okay. Okay, next one. Okay. There's a growing Slack thread debating whether to get oat milk or almond milk for the office fridge.
Pulverize. I am cow milk all the way. Old school style.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. That one was just a silly one. Okay. Your best copywriter is quietly looking for a new job.
Well,
How loud enough that you found out about it, though?
quiet as a bull in a china shop. I get that. I've been there. Um, that is the reality of our business. And theoretically, if somebody is satisfied, valued, and challenged, then hopefully there's really good opportunities to retain people. And most people don't. There have been times in every person's career where they're presented with an opportunity and they're like, I have no beef with my existing place. I just see this opportunity and I need to leave. And at that point, all you can do is celebrate that person's success because your collaboration, your coaching, your mentorship, you have been a part on the way to this person's success. And we all live on the same planet in the same industry. Their success is my success. Um, if somebody is looking because they're dissatisfied about something and it's something that's within my control, then okay, let's see, is it more challenges? Is it more collaboration? Is it sense of being valued? There's a lots ways to change somebody's impression of something to try and retain them. But the most important thing is making sure that you have the right people in the right fit. And if somebody has outgrown something and it's no longer within the company's control to give them that value, give them that sense, then all we can do is celebrate each other's successes and wish each other well.
Oh, I love that outlook because I do think there's definitely a point where you can see that someone is like quietly quitting, or like looking to quit, and find other opportunities. There's definitely an opportunity if you do find out about that and you are not an evil person, to look into why someone would want to, and maybe adjust for that or figure out like something you can do if they are your best person on whatever team it may be. Um, but at the same time, I do think there are specific instances where if they're not actively looking, they were just met with the opportunity. Like actively looking, I think means they're not satisfied for so and so reason. Or there's also some people that are always background looking, like regardless of if they're happy. But I think that there are instances in which this is just something that I need to try. Like I need to look at this because it's something that, is so grand and something that looks so great for me. And I think that I agree should just be celebrated because that means that you actually support the people that you work with or work under you rather than just wanting them to selfishly be a part of you for the inevitable forever.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. When I was younger, things were a lot murkier to me. I felt very personally invested in my work, and so I felt very personally invested when one of my colleagues wanted to leave. I'm like, "How dare you betray me? I'm alone." But kind of having as many years under my belt in my career as I do now, it comes with a certain perspective, which is it's not personal. It's not about your team versus my team or rivalry or how dare you go to this competitor's agency or this competitor's business, because most of the jobs that I've gotten throughout my career have been with people that I've worked with before, and our networks have expanded and we've had the opportunity to cross paths over and over again. So I know there's a natural instinct to say, no, stay here. Don't fort. But it's just, it's all part of change is a natural part of life, including business life.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that acceptance of that shows a like a lack of insecurity. Like it shows that you have a security in your business that it can survive without said person. And I think that if you are so worried that everything will fall apart because you don't have that person, I think that you might have to look inwards a little bit more.
There's probably some standard operating procedures that have been documented. There's probably something there.
Probably something else. And I think that also, if I think that it's always uncomfortable to like let someone know that you're thinking about looking for another job, but I think that truly, if you are so unbelievably comfortable and happy with where you are, and you know that people will like react to that and support to you, then I think that when you create that kind of environment for someone to tell you that they're like, they're even looking is shows mountains of like about who you are and what your company is, because someone like doesn't think you're going to act in a certain negative way because someone is, like looking to leave. And you also have more notice to replace them with someone who might be able to do the job in the same way they can. So that's a bigger conversation. But regrets. I'll give you one more prompt.
These are the getting warm questions. That's
I know, it's so funny. I think we expanded on them so well. Okay, I'll give you one more possibly silly one. Okay. Well, this one more like maybe is work-life balance a little bit when it's crazy. Okay. You haven't eaten lunch. Your inbox is on fire, and someone booked you in back-to-back 30-minute check-ins.
Okay, I know that the smart answer, the reasonable answer, the work-life balance, what I should do when I am being my best self is you got to eat first, because the hunger is real. You are not yourself when you're hungry. And it's just not a good time. So the right answer is grab a Fiber One bar, grab a banana, get whatever you can just inhale real quickly before the next call. The reality of the situation is you get tunnel visions and you get sucked in, and then hopefully you give yourself a cookie afterwards.
I completely understand. I think I am I sometimes I get sucked in where I don't even realize that I didn't have lunch if it's something like that. It's just the healthier thing probably is to have lunch, but the reality of it is if you're someone who gets sucked in easily, or you have any kind of ADD or ADHD, you're not going to remember that you had to eat. You're just going to do it.
Today in particular was one of those days where I woke up and I knew exactly what I was going to work on. And then by 8:45, I knew that all of that was canceled and I needed to focus on a new fire. And then I looked up and it was like 12:15. I'm like, where did I
Whoa. Yeah, those days are horrible because you're just pushing off the things that you did need to do, or you knew you needed to do, and now you have the new thing that you needed to do. It's very funny. It's a great phenomenon that happens to all of us, unfortunately. Well, we already had some great conversations already. The game is over. You did wonderful. You also provided a bunch of great advice during the game, which is amazing. This is a fabulous start. But anyway, so to talk more about you specifically, even though you kind of addressed some things, I want to know, and for the audience to know, about your professional journey up to this point, so that people get a little context of why you're giving this advice, and then also what you're doing now, and what you want to do in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jessi Bruton. I am currently Senior Creative Director at Reputation Inc. I've been with Rep Inc. for a little less than a year now, and it's a great small team. It's an active growth mode. And one of the main reasons why I joined was the founder, Michelle, and I worked together many agencies ago, and I've always had so much respect for her. And it's primarily been focused on public relations and content marketing up until now. And she had a real vision for expanding from that deep subject matter specialization to being slightly more full service and expanding into creative services, which is where I came. My background before working here really runs the gamut. I spent about a decade of my career in Northeast Florida in various advertising agencies. And now I'm currently located in Texas. I spent a handful of years in-house at Omni Hotels and Resorts, and then at another local advertising agency here in Dallas. So I've had the real luxury of a background where I've worked on small teams where I was employee number 6 when I was hired. I have worked on large teams where just a creative team was a dozen and a half people in a 100-person agency, little bit of in-house, little bit of agency. So it's a really well-rounded background that allows me to empathize a lot more with the client perspective than I ever could when I was agency only. And of course, with the agency perspective, working with colleagues who are also fellow creatives and designers, and also colleagues that have backgrounds in marketing, writing, public relations, people who are not creative, but we need to collaborate to create the best possible end product.
That is wonderful. Do you have a preference for what you like in as opposed to like a large business or agency and or a small agency? Like do you or maybe rather a preference because we don't want to know based off of what you're doing right now. Maybe that would be rude if it's not what you're doing. um, what are some likes and dislikes of each, like the problems that you see with both?
So something that I've experienced across all experiences, whether it is being the client, whether it is supporting the client, sometimes even when working alongside colleagues that are your teammates, is I think that there is a misperception when it comes to design, that design is surface level, make something pretty, make it visually attractive.
Mhm.
And my favorite thing and where I found the most success is when design is much more than decoration.
Mhm.
It's strategic, thoughtful. We always think about our messaging. What's our core messaging? What's a message that's going to resonate with our audience? Well, messaging is verbal communication or written communication. Design is visual communication. So if you can harness your visual and your verbal, you can create something that's more powerful than the sum of each individual part. And that's where I get really excited. I don't want to know what's your favorite color. I want to know, what are you trying to communicate to your audience?
Mhm.
What does success look like for your business? And then I'll say, based on color theory, we want to evoke a sense of excitement. So we're going to use this color, or we're going to evoke a sense of trustworthiness and credibility. So we're going to use this very stable, old school font and color palette to kind of convey that. That's my favorite thing. The thing that drives me nuts is when people say, make the logo bigger and use pink because it's my kid's favorite color. No offense, but nobody's opinion is more valuable than your bottom line.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think that there are all these elements of design that people don't really consider because they think it's just this aesthetically pleasing thing. Which of course that's part of it, always, but at the same time, it has this purpose of the idea of what is a brand identity and like the story behind what your brand is. Whereas for example, the example that you gave of my kid's favorite color is this. Like, but does is this brand made because of your kid? Like, if so, maybe that makes perfect sense. Like, that's the reason why people love that kind of story of like, this is my brand because of this and this. Like, this is why it looks like this. Or like, this is the inspiration behind this. That's fun. And that gives like people love to get attached to something like that. But there's so many people that just like how something looks and that's what they think is or they don't like how something looks and that's what they want to change, but they don't understand that sometimes it's not really your personal opinion of like what the color scheme is or what it is. It's like what your how your audience reacts to it. And that's like the whole goal.
Yeah, and on that note, one of my previous teams that I was on, we had a really, really strong media department that had a big background in testing. And so that was a lot of fun because I was able to present creative concepts and our chairman would say, well, I like this, but I don't know about that. I'm like, well, how about this? We'll A/B test and whoever wins will buy the other one lunch. I'm not saying that Charlie bought all of my lunches. It was not exactly an even split. The great thing about testing is even when, the first time it happened and my expectation didn't win, I was a little butthurt about it. I was like, something must have been flawed with the test. The methodology was off. I reject this. But then I came around to it. And the thing is, even when I lose, I win. Because if I have a hypothesis and it turns out it's not proven, what I thought was going to happen didn't resonate with the audience, didn't encourage click, didn't create a conversion the way that I expected it to. Well, now my assumption is challenged and I need to go back and figure out how my assumption was off so that next time around, I'm going to be a little bit smarter. My work's going to be a little bit more optimized. If you just go through life assuming that you're right all the time, then you kind of get static, you get stuck. You're kind of in this weird middle. When you get challenged, then that's where the growth opportunity happens.
I completely agree. There's something about the creative and marketing world that I love so much because you're constantly learning. And there's so many things specifically that you can even have evidence like to back up your claim of that something will work and it just doesn't work the way that you want. And I think that's so fun. It also does suck when you have that evidence and you lose or it's not or you fail or whatever it may be, especially when the line is like, I just feel that this is not right and not because there's any like basis behind it. It sucks when that happens, but it's a great learning moment to figure out, okay, well, like, why did this happen though? Because there's clearly like a reason why this didn't work, and sometimes it isn't something that necessarily means like, oh, you were a complete failure and everything that you thought was wrong. Sometimes it's something very small, like something's wrong with the website that you use. Like there is maybe that's, so that you can be right. That's fun as well. But also, there's so many factors that go into like why something worked the way it did. And so to find out that why and also learn for the next time that maybe a similar situation happens is so great. And you don't get to do that in a lot of positions. So it's something that I think is really valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
So talking about what's going on right now, because I think this is something in the agency world that is so common, especially when we go from like a startup to something that is getting even bigger and bigger. So you mentioned to me, as we talked in the beginning for the little game, that you guys are in kind of a growth mindset right now. I hate that term. But and there are a lot of moving factors and sometimes it's difficult to navigate teams and different projects based off of like maybe when we grow we don't have the ability to go and hire because we have so much stuff going on for different positions and stuff like that. What do you think the biggest challenge is navigating this situation?
That is a great question. I have a lot of thoughts on it.
I'm ready. Give it to me.
So the funny thing about being in growth mode is that when you are achieving success, you are growing the work that you are convincing people that you are a credible partner and qualified, and they want to give you money to do the thing that you do best. That is success. But then you look at your calendar or you look at your Asana task list or whatever project management software you use, and you're just like, this doesn't feel like success because I'm working 10-hour days and I'm still not clearing my queue. Like this is objectively successful, but it doesn't feel like it. And so there's inherently that push and pull where you need to cultivate the business in order to reach that threshold to grow your headcount. But until you reach that threshold, you're still doing more than a single person's capacity. So how to navigate that icky middle? My team has done a handful of things over the course of the past year, has helped us with that. It's still not a perfect situation, but at the very least, we've kind of approached it in a way that allows us to be a little bit more strategic and objective instead of just, I feel overwhelmed.
Mhm.
So the first thing that we've done is we put a lot of work into streamlining our creative briefs, how we capture information from the client on a project and then convey that in our project management system to the designer. Because something that's really easy, especially on a small team, is to just forward emails, fling over quick messages. We talked about this in our meeting the other day. So, I don't need to go through the whole rigmarole of documenting every single bit of information because, it's Jessi. I know Jessi's going to work on it. So if you get to a threshold where you might need to engage an outside person, a freelancer or what have you, then all of a sudden you can't just talk to that freelancer the way that you would Jessi because that person doesn't have the context, the historical information, the institutional knowledge about the client. So by just as a matter of exercise and standard operating procedure, by being a little bit more thoughtful and intentional with how we capture our information and project management system using creative briefs has really made it when we do need to flex to engage a third party, there's no longer a huge burden of a hurdle to overcome in terms of packaging up that information because it's already done. It's muscle memory at this point.
Mhm. And you have a lack of less room for misinterpretation or miscommunication because you're conveying something maybe differently than what had happened during that time based off of like memory or like just all these different things that now you can just everyone has a baseline information to be able to share with others.
Absolutely. Because even when we engage a third party freelancer, I'm still very involved. It's not just like, okay, that's totally off my plate, off my radar. Because something that I have seen over and over and over with client projects is if you don't have a single overseer, then if you have a handful of freelancers working on things, different designers all paint with their own brush. And so you end up with a smattering of things that somehow they all meet the brand standards. They all use the same colors and fonts and photography, but in different ways and with different design elements. So you have a bunch of things that are all on brand per the brand standards, but yet don't look exactly the same. There's kind of a lack of a common thread of consistency. S- That's where I come in. Even when I'm not doing something firsthand, I look at every single thing to provide some sort of feedback to say, hey, this could look a little bit more like this, where let's leverage that so that way it's a little bit smoother. And once we have a full library of things done for a client, they all look like they all belong in the same family.
Mhm.
And I couldn't provide thoughtful feedback if I didn't know the direction our person was given. So those creative briefs really become our single source of truth for everyone, the person doing the work and the person reviewing the work.
That is so incredibly helpful. I do think that streamlined proper processes like that are so incredible for being able to make sure that everyone's on the same page. I think that kind of when you interact with so many clients too, I think it's very difficult to stay on track of remembering exactly what the vision was from the beginning if you don't have it properly documented. And it's even harder when you have to talk to multiple people about what that means or like and for different purposes. So it definitely is great to have a streamlined process like that where everyone's used to doing this so that you can send out the same information to everyone and know that they have the same direction. And then it's easier to critique in the idea of like making sure that it's on brand with what your vision was in the first place.
Absolutely. And I had the opportunity to become a certified Scrum Master in a previous role. Um, I'm a creative, and yet here I am doing project management things. One of the core tenets of Scrum is um, consistency eliminates complexity. All of our lives are already so complex. We're dealing with multiple points of contact, multiple clients. If by doing one thing the same way every time, that consistency can remove just a single layer of complexity, it just takes so much cognitive energy out of the equation.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely there's when you're in a growth mindset, there's so much that is happening at once, especially if you're having things like 10-hour days, or there is like you are keeping track of more people than a single person can keep track of. Like obviously project management software really helps, but of course it's so difficult to navigate that in your brain. So to have something that you're regularly used to doing, those systems are incredibly helpful, not only for the average person, but someone with very rampant OCD like me. That's if there's not some kind of consistency in a product in some kind of project, then there's nothing. My head is just like on fire. Everyone is running around in there. So outside of this thing, because it seemed like you were getting at like multiple things that you're running into, what else is something that you deal with during this process?
So that was one thing that we did kind of, sorry, my brain just rebooted. This is not recorded live. So working on the creative briefs and kind of streamlining our internal communication was something that we did just kind of as a matter of um, operational hygiene, if you will. That's a benefit that we reap even within our internal team, but it has set us up for success for when we're in growth mode and we have more things to do in too tight of a timeline than we can accomplish. And we have to ask for help. We have to look outside for help. Now, one thing that anybody knows, you don't need a you know MBA to know that profit is the difference between revenue and cost. And so the more work you bring in, your revenue can go up, yay. But if your costs go up because you're spending a lot on outside resources, then that's not an ideal scenario. So you need to do these things very thoughtfully and intentionally. So, something that we did is we established very specific criteria for when it's time to talk about looking outside for resources. The first criteria is, of course, what do our internal resources look like? Are we slated for, the next 2 to 3 weeks having full, 30 to 40 hours of billable work? Or is it under that threshold? Um, if it's under that threshold because we know something's on the horizon, but it hasn't hit yet, et cetera. But the first thing is, if we have capacity, then it's a non-starter of a conversation. So in
Yeah.
the first question, a flow chart, yes, no, that's kind of a no-brainer. The next question is a little bit more sticky and nuanced, and that is, what projects do we have in our queue that lend themselves to going out of house? Some projects make sense for me to do because the client is new. They don't have clearly established brand guidelines. We're in kind of a creative mode where creative direction is a little bit loosey goosey and not very clear. So having something in house because we're in experimentation mode might make sense and really doesn't lend itself to going out of house versus, okay, well, something that we've already done a brochure for this client for one particular business line of theirs. We need a new brochure for two additional business lines. We're creating new projects, but they're based on something that already exists. So the direction's pretty clear to marry new content with existing visual. That really lends itself to going out of house. On that same note, kind of question 2B, if you will, is our resources, are they a good match? We have some resources who are gifted when it comes to animation, video, all things digital, but you give them a print project, they'll take it because they're professionals and they have Adobe InDesign, they can do the things, but you get a different work product from them than you do somebody who really specializes in print materials or signage or what have you. So there's also a certain element of being thoughtful about what resource is available and what kind of is their realm of genius.
No, that I think it makes complete sense to have to delineate what is necessary to have like outsourced, because I think that a lot of people do fall in the trap of outsourcing something that even though it might feel helpful, is almost a burden because you might be able to do it better yourself or in-house or whoever is related. But there's also many scenarios in which outsourcing is extremely helpful and can get a lot off your plate. And I think it's the dynamic of knowing when that's supposed to be happening. It's the same thing with AI tools of like, there are a lot of things that can be helpful that you can incorporate into your work. But if you incorporate too many, one, you have to learn how to use all of them. Um, which is a feat in itself. I'm not technologically savvy, so that's a feat for me. But on top of that, it's like you're incorporating a new thing into your system is disrupting the system. So if you're doing it all at once in different places, then you might destroy the system or like make it much more difficult to navigate, even though you're incorporating these things to make things easier. So it's like a balancing act of knowing what will actually be easier, which I completely understand.
Yeah, the big thing is we kind of learned through a certain amount of trial and error is we needed to be intentional and methodical and kind of what we were talking about before, where it's like, your brand color shouldn't be based on your feelings. It should be based on your strategy and what goal you're trying to achieve. Is by taking a little bit of the I feel overbooked, I feel underworked, I feel this out of the equation and establishing really thoughtful criteria around those things, then the conversation stops being about, I feel like we should do this. And it starts being, this is the criteria that we've all agreed on to accomplish our goals.
Mhm. No, I think that is very important. It's not, um, a lot of people, especially if it's like they're the founder of their company or they are so deeply invested in it, they have a lot of opinions that maybe aren't necessarily warranted with fact. It's just that they feel a certain way because their company is their baby and they want it to be exactly how they curated it in their mind, but they don't realize that clients are a little, in certain cases, more important than your vision sometimes. And in probably most cases, but especially with brand identity, I think it's a very difficult situation to navigate sometimes with someone that cares so deeply about their business, because if they built it from the ground up, they have a very particular way of like what it should be like. But sometimes they don't understand that like that might not resonate with the audience that you're trying to, interact with. So it's definitely incorporating all of those systems and also having those conversations is difficult, but awesome. And you guys are doing it, so it's awesome. Well, we are grossly over time, but I think that means that it was very, very fun and we had a good conversation. So I'm going to stop us here, but thank you so much. This was so fun. And I really do think this is a great glimpse in trouble that every agency deals with at some point. So I love the transparency with this. So thank you so much for that. And providing helpful advice for something very real that happens to all of us, whether we'd like to admit it or not.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out and for the invitation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you again. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you got as much knowledge out of this as I did. And we'd be nothing without you. So continue to watch other episodes to get to learn like I get to every time. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely day.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.